Captain Lyra Lee Moonwhisper sat in her command chair on the bridge of the Starweaver. The elven ship moved quietly through space, its silver hull catching starlight like moonbeams on water. She had been captain for 30 years, and in all that time, she had never received a distress call from a human ship. The communication system made a soft chime. Her pointed ears twitched as she heard the crackling voice come through the speakers. "This is the Terra's Pride calling any ships in the area. We have critical system failures and need immediate help. Our position is—" The voice cut out in static. Lyra Lee's green eyes went wide. She looked at her crew on the bridge. Chief Science Officer Ileana Starborn was already at her station, her silver hair falling over her shoulders as she bent over her instruments. "Captain," Ileana said, her voice tight with worry, "I'm picking up massive energy readings from that direction. The signatures are unusual." Navigator Sylviana Dawnblade turned from her post. Her blue eyes were filled with concern. "Captain, that's a human ship. We should be very careful. Humans are known for their tricks in war." Lyra Lee nodded slowly. Every elf in the galaxy had heard stories about humans. They were said to be violent and unpredictable. They fought wars that lasted for years and used weapons that could destroy entire planets. Most alien species avoided them when possible. "Ileana, what kind of energy readings are you getting?" Lyra Lee asked. The science officer's hands moved quickly over her controls. Her face grew pale. "Captain, I'm seeing thermal signatures that are off the charts. It looks like their ship is on fire. The entire hull is showing heat levels that should have melted the metal." Engineer Thalion Brightforge spoke up from his station. His deep voice carried worry. "Captain, if a human ship is burning, we need to stay far away. Human technology is dangerous even when it's broken. When it's on fire," he shook his head. Lyra Lee felt her heart beating faster. She had always tried to follow the old elven ways of helping those in need. But humans were different. They were scary. Their ships carried weapons that could turn a moon into space dust. Their soldiers could fight for days without rest. "Show me the ship on the screen," she ordered. The main view screen flickered and showed the black of space. In the distance, a shape glowed like a small star. Even from far away, they could see bright white and orange light covering parts of the hull. It looked like the ship was melting. "By the ancient trees," Sylviana whispered. "How is that ship still in one piece?" Ileana checked her readings again. "Captain, the temperature readings are climbing. Whatever is happening over there is getting worse. If we're going to help them, we need to decide now." Lyra Lee closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her crew. All 23 elves on her ship trusted her to keep them safe. She thought about the human ship and the people who might be dying in that fire. "Thalion, prepare our defensive systems. Just in case," she said. "Sylviana, plot a course to the human ship. Keep us at a safe distance." "How far is safe when dealing with humans?" Sylviana asked. "I don't know," Lyra Lee admitted. "Far enough that we can run if we need to." As the Starweaver moved closer, the readings got worse. The human ship looked like it was covered in liquid fire. Parts of the hull glowed so bright they hurt to look at. "Captain," Ileana said, her voice shaking. "I'm reading plasma discharges across their entire outer hull. The energy levels are beyond anything I've ever seen. This isn't just a fire. This is like their ship is coming apart at the atomic level." Thalion checked his own instruments. "Our defensive shields are ready, Captain, but I don't think they would stop whatever is happening on that ship." Lyra Lee gripped the arms of her chair. She had made her choice. They were going to help, even if it meant danger. "Open a channel to the human ship," she ordered. The communication system crackled to life. For a moment there was only static. Then a voice came through, clearer this time. "This is Commander Lisa Brooks of the Terra's Pride. Thank you for responding to our call." Lyra Lee was surprised. The human woman sounded calm. Too calm for someone whose ship was on fire. "This is Captain Lyra Lee Moonwhisper of the elven ship." "Starweaver," she replied. "We can see that your ship appears to be burning. How can we help?" There was a pause. Then Commander Brooks spoke again, and Lyrelei could swear she heard amusement in the human's voice. Burning? Oh, you mean the external work lights? No, Captain, we're not in any immediate danger. We just need to send Katie over to help with some routine maintenance. Would that be acceptable? Lyrelei looked at her crew in confusion. Work lights? The entire ship looked like it was melting, and the human called it work lights? Commander Brooks, Lyrelei said carefully, our sensors show your ship is experiencing massive thermal events, energy discharges that should have destroyed your vessel. Are you certain you don't need emergency assistance? Another pause. Then came a sound that made every elf on the bridge freeze in fear. It was a harsh barking noise that the universal translator marked as laughter. Captain Moonwhisper, I appreciate your concern, but we're just doing some external repairs. Nothing we haven't done 1,000 times before. Katie will be over shortly to coordinate with your engineering team. Brooks out. The channel closed, leaving the elven crew in stunned silence. Captain, Eliana whispered, what kind of species? Does routine maintenance with energy levels that could power our entire ship for a year? Lyrelei stared at the burning human ship and realized they were about to find out. The elven crew of the Starweaver watched the human ship in silence. The Terra's pride continued to glow like a small sun in the darkness of space. Bright streams of energy danced across its hull like lightning trapped in metal. Captain Lyrelei tried to understand what she had just heard. The human commander had sounded so calm. Too calm for someone whose ship looked like it was about to explode. Eliana, she said to her science officer, run a full scan of their ship. I want to know what we're really dealing with. Eliana's hands moved quickly over her controls. Her silver hair caught the light from her screens as data flowed across them. Captain, this doesn't make sense. The energy readings are stable, but they're still impossibly high. It's like they're running their entire power grid through their outer hull. Engineer Thalion looked up from his station. That's impossible. No ship can handle that much energy without melting. Their hull should be space dust by now. Navigator Sylviana checked her instruments again. Captain, I'm also picking up something else. There are smaller energy signatures moving around the human ship. They look like people working outside in space. Working outside? Lyrelei repeated. In those energy levels, they would be killed instantly. The communication system chimed, again. Commander Brooks's voice came through the speakers. Starweaver, this is Terra's Pride. Katie is ready to transfer over. She'll be bringing some equipment to help with the coordination. Please prepare your docking bay. Lyrelei felt her mouth go dry. They wanted to send someone over to her ship. Someone from that burning vessel. Commander Brooks, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Are you certain it's safe for your crew member to travel in these conditions? Our sensors show energy levels that would be lethal to most species. There was that strange barking sound again. The translator called it laughter, but it sounded threatening to elven ears. Captain, Katie has done this kind of work many times. She knows how to handle herself around a little heat. She'll be over in about 10 minutes. The channel closed again. Lyrelei looked at her crew. Fear was clear on every elven face. Captain, Eliana said quietly, what if this is a trap? What if the humans are using this as a way to get onto our ship? Thalion nodded. Human soldiers are said to be incredibly dangerous. If they want to take our ship, sending one person over would be a smart way to start. Sylviana checked her navigation controls. I have our escape route ready, Captain. We can be gone in 30 seconds if needed. Lyrelei thought about their options. They could refuse to let the human board their ship. They could run away right now. But something about Commander Brooks's voice made her curious. The human had sounded genuinely confused when Lyrelei mentioned the energy readings. Prepare the docking bay, she ordered, but have security teams ready and keep our shields up. Captain, Eliana protested, this could be very dangerous. I know, Lyrelei replied. But we came here to help. We can't run away now without knowing what's really happening. 10 minutes later, their sensors detected something moving away from the human ship. It was small, much smaller than a normal shuttle. On the view screen, they could see a figure in what looked like a simple spacesuit floating through the void. That's impossible, Thalion whispered. She's not using any kind of propulsion. How is she moving? Eliana checked her readings. Captain, the human is somehow guiding herself through space using only small movements. And she's pulling something behind her, something big. On the screen they could see the human woman was indeed pulling a large piece of equipment. It was easily 10 times her size, but she moved it like it weighed nothing. The equipment she's bringing, Sylviana said, her voice filled with awe. It's showing the same energy signatures as their ship. She's carrying something that's putting out enough power to run a small city. Lyrelai watched as the human approached their docking bay. The woman moved with impossible grace through the vacuum of space. She guided herself and the massive equipment through the narrow opening of the docking bay with perfect control. The docking bay sealed and filled with air. On the internal cameras, they could see the human woman standing calmly in the middle of the bay. She was of average height for a human, with brown hair visible through her helmet. She looked completely relaxed. "Captain," came a new voiceover, the communication system. "This is Katie Martinez. Thanks for letting me come aboard. I hope I can help clear up any confusion about our operations." Her voice was warm and friendly, nothing like the dangerous human soldiers the elves had heard about in stories. "Ms. Martinez," Lyrelai replied. "Welcome aboard the Starweaver. I must admit we're very concerned about the energy readings from your ship. Our instruments suggest conditions that should be impossible to survive." Katie's laughter came through the speakers. It was softer than Commander Brooks, but it still made the elves nervous. "Oh, you mean the cutting torches?" "Yeah, we're doing some hull repair work. The equipment runs a little hot, but it's nothing we can't handle. Would you like me to come to your bridge? I can explain what we're doing." Lyrelai looked at her crew. Thalion was checking his security systems. Eliana was running scans on the equipment Katie had brought. Sylviana was ready to jump to faster than light. "Speed at the first sign of trouble." "Yes," Lyrelai said finally. "Please come to the bridge. We would very much like to understand what kind of routine maintenance requires energy levels that could destroy most ships." "On my way, Captain. And don't worry, I left the really dangerous stuff back on our ship." As the communication ended, Lyrelai realized that Katie's idea of really dangerous might be very different from what the elves considered safe. The captain took a deep breath and prepared to meet her first human face-to-face. The bridge doors opened with a soft hiss. Katie Martinez walked in, and every elf on the bridge stared at her in surprise. She looked so normal. Katie was not very tall, maybe average height for a human. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore a basic spacesuit that looked much lighter than the heavy armor elves used for spacewalks. Her helmet was tucked under one arm and she was smiling. "Hi, everyone," Katie said, her voice cheerful. "Thanks for the warm welcome. I know this might seem a little unusual, but I promise everything is perfectly safe." Captain Lyrelai stood up from her command chair. She had expected a dangerous warrior or maybe a desperate refugee. Instead, she was looking at a woman who seemed as comfortable as if she were visiting friends. "Ms. Martinez," Lyrelai said carefully, "we appreciate you coming aboard, but I must ask, are you not concerned about the energy levels surrounding your ship? Our sensors indicate conditions that would be lethal to any known species." Katie tilted her head, looking puzzled. "Lethal? Oh, you mean the plasma cutters. Yeah, they run pretty hot, but that's normal for hull work. We always use proper safety gear." She gestured to her spacesuit. To the elves, it looked like little more than thick clothing. Eliana spoke up from her science station. "Ms. Martinez, our readings show temperatures of over 10,000 degrees around your ship's hull. How is that safe?" Katie's face lit up with understanding. "Oh, I see the problem. You're reading the torch output directly. Yeah, plasma cutters do run hot, but we don't work right next to the cutting edge. We stay a safe distance away, usually about 2 or 3 feet. The elven crew exchanged shocked looks. 2 or 3 feet away from temperatures that could melt metal. "Ms. Martinez," Thalion said from his engineering station, "perhaps you could explain what kind of work your team is doing? Our instruments are having trouble understanding your technology." Katie walked over to the main view screen where the Terra's Pride was still visible, glowing like a star. "Sure thing. We're replacing a damaged plasma relay in our main engine housing. It's not a big job, but it has to be done in space because the relay is on the outside of the ship. We use plasma cutters to remove the old parts and welders to install the new ones. She pointed to different parts of the ship on the screen. See those bright spots? Those are just work lights so Katie can see what she's doing. The really bright streams are the cutting torches removing the damaged sections. Silviana looked confused. You said Katie can see what she's doing. But you are Katie. Katie laughed. Oh, sorry. There are actually 3 of us working on this job. I'm Katie Martinez, and there's also Katie Chen and Katie Williams. We all volunteer for external repair work because we're good at working in vacuum. Lyrelai felt dizzy. You have 3 people working outside your ship in those conditions? Well, yeah, Katie said, as if it were obvious. Hull repair is always a team job. One person handles the cutting. One person manages the new parts and one person watches for safety issues. Standard procedure. Eliana was studying her instruments frantically. Ms. Martinez, I'm reading energy signatures from your equipment that suggest you're carrying antimatter containment units. Surely that can't be correct? Katie nodded casually. Oh sure, the plasma relays run on antimatter. That's why we have to be so careful with the installation. If we mess up the magnetic containment, it could damage the whole engine section. The bridge went completely silent. Every elf was staring at Katie with expressions of pure terror. You're working with antimatter, Lyralee said slowly. While floating in space using tools that operate at 10,000 degrees, and you consider this routine maintenance? Katie looked around at their shocked faces and seemed to realize something. Was wrong. Yes? I mean, we take safety seriously. We always wear our suits, we check our tools before starting work, and we never work alone. Is there something specific you're worried about? Thalian's voice was barely a whisper. Ms. Martinez, antimatter is the most dangerous substance known to science. A single mistake could destroy both our ships and everything within 100,000 kilometers. Katie's eyebrows went up. Oh, wow. I can see why you'd be nervous if you're not used to antimatter tech. But honestly, it's pretty safe as long as you follow the procedures. I've been doing this kind of work for 5 years and never had a serious accident. She paused and looked thoughtful. Well, there was that one time when Katie Williams accidentally cut through a power coupling and we lost artificial gravity for an hour. But that was just embarrassing, not dangerous. Eliana was checking her readings again. Ms. Martinez, how are you able to survive in the vacuum of space for extended periods? Our biology requires complex life support systems for even short space walks. Katie looked down at her simple spacesuit. This? It's just a basic environmental suit. Keeps the air in, keeps the cold out. The power pack is good for about 8 hours of work. 8 hours? Silviana gasped. You can work in hard vacuum for 8 hours? Well, yeah. The job we're doing today should only take about 6 hours total. We started about 2 hours ago, so we're about a third done. Lyrelai sat back down in her command chair, feeling weak. Ms. Martinez, I think we need to understand something. What you're describing as routine maintenance sounds impossible to us. No known species in the galaxy works with antimatter so casually. The energy levels you're using could power our entire ship for months. Katie looked genuinely surprised. Really, huh? I knew different species had different tech levels, but I didn't realize the gap was that big. She brightened up. Hey, would you like me to show you how the plasma cutters work? I brought one of the smaller ones over with me. It might help you understand what we're doing. The thought of a human demonstrating antimatter-powered tools on their ship made every elf's blood run cold, but Captain Lyrelai found herself nodding. Yes, Ms. Martinez. I think we would very much like to see how humans do routine maintenance. Katie led the elven crew to the docking bay where she had left her equipment. As they walked through the corridors of the Starweaver, she chatted casually about her work. I've been doing external repairs for about 5 years now, she said. Started right out of engineering school. It's actually pretty relaxing work once you get used to it. You get amazing views of space, and there's something peaceful about working in vacuum. Lyrelai walked beside her, still trying to process what she was hearing. Ms. Martinez, most species consider space to be one of the most hostile environments possible. How do you find it peaceful? Katie shrugged. I guess it's just what you're used to. Space is quiet, you know. No wind, no weather, No distractions. Just you and the work. It helps you focus. They reached the docking bay and the elves got their first close look at Katie's equipment. What she had called a smaller plasma cutter was the size of a large trunk. It hummed quietly with contained energy that made the air around it shimmer. "This is a Mark 7 portable plasma cutter," Katie explained, patting the device like it was a pet. "It's powered by a micro-antimatter cell that provides about 6 hours of continuous operation. The cutting beam can slice through pretty much any material we've ever encountered." Eliana approached slowly, her scanner in hand. "Ms. Martinez, my instruments are detecting energy levels that shouldn't be possible to contain in something this small." "Oh, the containment field technology is pretty advanced," Katie agreed. "The antimatter is held in a magnetic bottle that's about the size of a marble. As long as the magnetic field stays stable, it's perfectly safe." Thalion was studying the device from a safe distance. "What happens if the magnetic field fails?" Katie thought for a moment. "Well, you'd get a pretty big explosion. Probably take out a few kilometers of space around it. But these containment systems are super reliable. I think the last recorded failure was about 3 years ago, and that was because someone forgot to do their monthly maintenance checks." The elven engineer went pale. 3 years ago? How often do these failures happen?" "Oh, maybe once every few years across all of human space," Katie said cheerfully. "And that's with thousands of these devices in use every day. The safety record is actually really good." Sylviana was backing toward the door. "Katie, you're telling us that you routinely work with devices that could destroy everything around them for kilometers?" "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds dangerous," Katie laughed. "But really, we take lots of precautions. We always work in teams, we check our equipment twice before starting, and we follow strict safety protocols." She activated a control panel on the plasma cutter. The device hummed louder, and a thin beam of incredibly bright light shot out about 6 inches before being contained by a safety field. Every elf in the docking bay jumped backward. "It's okay," Katie called out. "This is just the demonstration setting. The beam is contained in a safety field. Here, let me show you what it can do." She pulled out a piece of metal from her equipment bag. It looked like normal ship hull material. She held it in front of the plasma beam for just a second. The metal didn't just melt. It turned into glowing vapor instantly. "See?" Katie said, turning off the beam. "Clean, precise cutting. Perfect for removing damaged hull sections. And the beam is so focused that it doesn't affect anything more than a few millimeters away from the cutting line." Lirelai stared at the empty space where the metal had been. That piece of hull material was made from titanium steel composite. It should have taken several minutes to cut through with our best tools. "Titanium steel?" "Yeah, that stuff cuts pretty easily," Katie nodded. "The plasma beam operates at about 15,000 degrees, so most metals just vaporize on contact. That's why we have to be careful about what's behind what we're cutting." Eliana was taking readings frantically. "The energy density in that beam is incredible. How do you control something so powerful?" Katie showed them the control interface. It looked surprisingly simple, just a few buttons and a small screen. It's not that hard once you learn the basics. The computer handles most of the work. You just tell it what material you want to cut and how thick it is, and it adjusts the beam automatically. The hardest part is making sure you cut in straight lines. She looked at their shocked faces and seemed to realize something. "You know, I'm starting to think that humans might have different ideas about what's dangerous than other species do." Thalion laughed, but it sounded a little hysterical. "Ms. Martinez, you're casually using technology that could level cities, and you're worried about cutting straight lines." "Well, crooked cuts look unprofessional," Katie said seriously. "Katie, Williams got written up last month because she left wavy edges on a hull patch. Commander Brooks takes pride in our work quality." The communication system crackled to life. "Katie, this is Katie Chen. How's the demonstration going? We're almost ready for the final installation phase over here." Katie picked up a portable communicator. "Going great, Katie. The elves are really interested in our equipment. I should be back in about 20 minutes. "Roger that. Katie Williams says to remind you to show them the safety protocols. She thinks they seem a little nervous about the antimatter." Katie looked at the elven crew who were all pressed against the far wall of the docking bay. Katie Chen? I think they might be more than a little nervous. Oh, well, show them the emergency shutdown procedures. That usually helps. The channel closed, and Katie turned back to the elves. Okay, so let me show you how we handle emergencies. If something goes wrong with the antimatter containment, you just hit this red button here. She pointed to a large red button on the side of the device. What does that do? Lyrelai asked. It ejects the antimatter cell into space and sends out an emergency beacon. The cell explodes safely away from any ships, and rescue teams know to come look for survivors. Survivors? Sylviana squeaked. Well, yeah. I mean, if you have to emergency eject the antimatter, it usually means your ship is in pretty bad shape. But the explosion happens far enough away that it won't hurt anyone. Katie noticed their expressions and tried to be reassuring. But, honestly, that almost never happens. These devices are really reliable. I've been using them for years and never had to hit the emergency button. She paused thoughtfully. Although Katie Williams did have to use it once when she accidentally dropped her cutter into an antimatter engine intake. But that was just bad luck. Captain Lyrelai realized that her understanding of human capabilities had been completely wrong. These weren't dangerous warriors or reckless fools. They were engineers who treated the impossible as routine. Katie finished packing up her demonstration equipment and prepared to return to the Terra's Pride. The repair work was almost complete, and her team was waiting for her to help with the final installation. Thanks for letting me come aboard, she said to Captain Lyrelai. I hope this helped clear up any confusion about our operations. Lyrelai nodded slowly. Her mind was still trying to process everything she had learned. Ms. Martinez, I have one more question. How long have humans been using antimatter technology? Katie thought for a moment. In space construction? About 50 years, I think. Maybe 60. It started with deep space mining operations where you needed really powerful tools to cut through asteroid rock. 50 years, Eliana repeated quietly. We've been studying antimatter theory for 300 years and still consider it too dangerous for practical use. Really? Huh. Katie looked genuinely interested. What kind of power sources do you use for heavy construction? Fusion reactors, Thalion answered. Very carefully controlled fusion reactors with multiple safety systems. Katie brightened up. Oh, we use those too. They're great for ship power and life support. But for portable tools, antimatter just gives you so much more energy density. A fusion reactor big enough to power a plasma cutter would be the size of a building. She pulled a small device from her tool belt. It was about the size of a book. This is a backup power cell. It's got enough energy to run my plasma cutter for about an hour. A fusion reactor with the same output would weigh 10 tons. The elves stared at the small device. Enough energy to power their ship for days, contained in something Katie carried, as a spare. Ms. Martinez, Lyrelai said carefully. I'm beginning to understand that humans have a very different relationship with dangerous technology than other species do. Katie nodded. I guess we do. My grandmother always said that humans have a talent for making the impossible look easy. She worked on the first antimatter engines back when they were experimental. Your grandmother worked with experimental antimatter engines? Sylviana asked. Oh yeah. She was one of the engineers who figured out how to make stable containment fields. She used to tell stories about the early days when they had to evacuate the test site every time they wanted to run an experiment. Katie laughed at the memory. She said the safety protocols back then were so strict that it took longer to set up the safety equipment than to do the actual test. Now we just do this stuff as routine maintenance. The communication system crackled again. Katie, this is Commander Brooks. How are things going over there? Katie picked up her communicator. All good, Commander. The elves had some questions about our safety procedures, but I think we've got everything sorted out. Excellent. Katie, Chen and Katie Williams just finished the installation. We're ready for you to come back and do the final systems check. On my way. Katie turned back to the elven crew. It's been really nice meeting all of you. Thanks for being so patient with my explanations. She reached into her equipment bag and pulled out a small device. I'd like to give you this as a thank you gift. It's a basic multi-scanner. Nothing fancy, but it might help you understand how we approach engineering problems. She handed the device to Thalion. It was small and light, but when he activated it, his eyes went wide. This is reading quantum fluctuations in real time, and subatomic particle streams, and gravitational field variations. He looked up at Katie. How is this possible? Katie shrugged. It's just a standard diagnostic tool. Every engineer carries one. Makes troubleshooting a lot easier when you can see what's actually happening at the molecular level. Thalion continued staring at the device. To him, it represented technology centuries ahead of anything the elves had developed. To Katie, it was just a basic tool. Ms. Martinez, Lyreley said, I think we owe you an apology. When we first detected your ship, we thought you were in terrible danger. We were prepared to risk our lives to rescue you. Katie smiled warmly. That's really kind of you. I appreciate that you were willing to help strangers. That says good things about elven culture. But now I realize, Lyreley continued, that if anyone was in danger today, it was us. Your routine maintenance operations involve more destructive power than our entire ship carries. Oh, I wouldn't worry about that, Katie said cheerfully. Humans are generally pretty careful about not accidentally blowing things up. We save that for special occasions. She winked, and the elves weren't entirely sure she was joking. As Katie prepared to leave, she paused at the docking bay door. If you're ever interested in learning more about human engineering, you should visit one of our construction stations. We're building a new deep space habitat near the Vega system. It's pretty impressive. They're moving entire asteroids around to create the foundation structure. Moving asteroids? Eliana asked faintly. Yeah, just small ones. Nothing bigger than a few kilometers across. The gravity manipulation technology makes it pretty straightforward. Katie left the Star Weaver and returned to her ship, moving through space with the same casual ease she had shown before. The elves watched as she guided herself back to the Terra's Pride, where the other two Katies were waiting. As the human ship prepared to depart, its engines lit up with energy discharges that registered on elven sensors as weapon-level signatures. But now Lyreley understood that what looked like preparations for battle was just a human ship starting its engines. Captain, Eliana said quietly, I think we need to update our files on human capabilities. Lyreley nodded. Yes, and I think we need to recommend that the Elven Council establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. Because they're so dangerous? Sylviana asked. No, Lyreley replied, watching the Terra's Pride disappear into faster-than-light travel. Because any species that can turn the vacuum of space into their workplace and treats antimatter like a household tool deserves our respect. She made a note in her ship's log. Encountered human engineering team conducting routine maintenance. Previous assessments of human technological capabilities appear to be significantly underestimated. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact to establish proper relations with a species that has clearly mastered technologies we considered impossible. As the Starweaver continued on its journey, the elven crew found themselves looking at space differently. What had once seemed like an empty, hostile void now seemed full of possibilities. If humans could work in vacuum like elves worked in forests, what other impossible things might be possible? Thalion spent the rest of the day studying Katie's multi-scanner, each new discovery making him realize how much the elves still had to learn. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Captain Lyreley found herself wondering what other routine maintenance humans might be doing across the galaxy, and what other species might be watching in amazement as humans made the impossible look easy.